Third segment of the Pride of Detroit POD cast. This is our training camp preview. Yes, we're moving over to defense. We ended talking about offensive line and how much we're excited for Sewell versus Hutchinson having a sumo wrestling battle in basically void space with anime stands and everything, just like JoJo. But let's talk about it from Hutchinson's side of things because I feel like we've gone light talking about Hutchinson this offseason. Not much to talk about other than we just hope he comes out of the gate swinging. Yeah, I think that is if there is one player I am excited to see in training camp, it's Hutchinson. I want to see what he can do. I know it's kind of an easy answer. He's the number 2 pick. He's the big shiny new toy, but I don't know. I feel like a lot of my attention span has been devoted to Goff, to wide receivers, to Jamison Williams,
It's the offense, right?
to the offense, but I want to see what damage Hutchinson can do because I have sat here for years hoping for a big, shiny new pass rusher. And now is the time to see what that's like.
And he's in an iron sharpens iron situation, right? He might not be that successful right away because the Lions have a heck of a duo at tackle, but that's only going to make him better. And it's two very different type of tackles too. And Hutchinson's going to see some time on the left. He's going to see some time on the right. So he's going to have to deal with Decker and kind of a more I get refined pass blocking technique versus Sewell, who's still kind of getting to learn it, but is much more of an athlete, a smaller one, but a more physical and fast one. And so I think that just getting that dose of different tackles is going to make him a better player. And he's that dude is going to hit the ground running, right? Like he's been waiting his entire life for this. And so there's not going to be any question about his motor. And there's not going to be any question about him losing his motor or running out of juice. All that sort of stuff we already know he's going to carry from August to January. Like that's not an issue. It's just a matter of kind of refining his game. And like I said, he's got a good duo to go against there.
Yeah, I think the thing, maybe not just related, I guess, to training camp, but like I just want to see Charles Harris be the guy. You know what I mean? Like I want them to feel so confident that without Romeo Okwara out there, they feel just as comfortable with that guy out there doing what they're paying him to do, doing what he did last season. But now he has the benefit of having Aiden Hutchinson on the other side. So that's the thing that I think I'm looking forward to the most in terms of the edge rush during training camp is seeing like Charles Harris just be that steady, dependable guy.
Yeah, and they'll have time to get more of Harris and Hutchinson, especially with Okwara maybe missing him here through most of training camp. Year 2 jumps for Levi and Aleem. Which do you think is more likely? Levi Onwuzurike making the big jump or Aleem McNeil making the big jump? Because this is, I don't know, this is a side that the Lions invested heavily in. The returns have not been seen yet, Jeremy. They've improved the edges very well, but kind of in the interior, it needs to really step up.
Needs to come together, yeah. Well, I mean, Aleem showed more in year 1. I guess you could argue that Levi had more excuses for a worse performance because of all the back issues and hip issues and all that sort of stuff. And Levi plays, I would say, a more impactful position because he's more of a pass rusher. But I think they're going to put Aleem in more pass rushing situations, which is actually what I was kind of looking forward to since he got here because he's got that quick first step for a 330-pound guy. And so they're going to let him loose a little bit, and I'm excited for that. I think they are really going to unlock Aleem in a way. You know, PFF called him a breakout candidate, and I'm right there with him. Levi, I am hopeful for, but I need to see a little bit more evidence that he's capable of doing it on this level. I need evidence that he can stay healthy because back issues are ones that just don't go away. I know that he's had rest, and that's important and critical for back injuries, but at some point it feels like that might flare up again. And so how can he react to that? How long will it be before that happens? And how much can he grow and learn in 1 year? I don't know. We'll see. I'm much more optimistic about Aleem, but there is a certain amount of hope I have for both.
Yeah, and I think you covered that. So, I mean, really, this is a conversation that we should probably at Michael Brockers and let him know that this is a pretty big season for I would say not just for your stint with the Lions, but for your NFL career,
yeah,
right?
Rest of your career. Yeah.
Yeah. He's not exactly a spring chicken anymore. He's kind of entering the twilight of his career, but he can definitely stave off that that twilight portion of his NFL journey, if he steps up, like he needs to be a big contributor for this team. And I think that like as the interior of this defensive line works, like Aleem can't do it all by himself. I think that's asking a lot for a guy who had a very specialized position and role in the defense last season to take that on this year and all of a sudden be like a pass rushing, penetrating 3-tech. I think that's a lot to put on that guy's plate. So Brockers definitely has to pull his weight. And the one unknown, I guess, is Jashawn Cornell.
Played well in the spring, and listen, there's probably gonna be a DT4 spot right behind the 3 that we've already mentioned, and he has to be the leading candidate because I don't know how excited you are about Demetrius Taylor, an undrafted rookie who has some traits that you like, but undrafted rookie, and then Bruce Hector, a guy who's kind of hung around and gotten some snaps here and there, but not one that's going to excite you.
Well,
go ahead.
I was going to say they've put money into Cornell too, haven't they?
Well, they drafted him, right? Like,
right.
Yeah, they drafted him.
The previous regime.
That is true. It's the previous regime. So he's got a different crowd to impress, but started well this spring.
Well, yeah, and I think the interesting thing about him is like he missed time because he had a PED suspension.
He did, yeah.
And this is a guy who was drafted. He was 7th round pick of the 2020 draft. Like this is a guy who, from a previous regime, went through a suspension, and the team is still keeping him around.
Right? In his rookie season, I think he tore. Like he's only played 1 game.
Right. Yeah. So like with Cornell, like it's a really interesting situation, and they bring in Isaiah Buggs too. Right. I don't know where he fits in. Like he's just another kind of body to see if something sticks.
Yeah. I'm actually a little bit more interested in the depth on the edge side because we're going to get a good look at a lot of them. No Josh Pascal to start, no Romeo Okwara to start. Who's the other? Natchez Patrick also not going to be there to start. So we'll get a good look at Julian, who we got a good look at spring, and it looks like they're going to use him in a whole bunch of different ways. But like James Houston, a guy, maybe the only rookie in this draft class where we probably left OTAs and minicamp a little bit lower on the guy than when we came in because they had to scale back all the linebacking work he did. Can he maybe show that he's so good on the edge that maybe they don't need to worry about him as an off-ball linebacker? Austin Bryan is a guy I think many of us have written off. Can he?
I was going to bring Austin Bryan.
Yeah.
I still think he's got a shot here. I don't think he's completely outside the bubble.
I think he's outside the bubble to start, but because of all these early injuries, he's going to have an opportunity to prove it in these snaps. And so I think these first 2 weeks of training camp, and I know the pads don't come on for a few days, I think they're going to be really, really important for Austin Bryan.
You mentioned linebackers a little bit. Let's move there a little bit. So Julian is still in the mix. Alexander's a linebacker to me kind of feels wide open. I know they've said nobody's really starting here, but who's going to have these 2 starting jobs? Like it's so hard to figure this out. And kind of going onto all this is Malcolm Rodriguez. You drafted him, and he kind of seems like the stable. I hate to call these guys stock, but it seems like the stable stock to invest in. But I don't know if I'm going to want to put my entire linebacker core hopes on top of a rookie. I feel like, and this is going to feel weird for me, Jeremy, and you're not going to like it. I feel like I'm stable with Jared Davis at this point.
Oof.
I feel like at this point, I like Jared Davis on this team.
I mean, there's absolutely no doubt he fits culturally. And he also fits kind of what they're trying to do with that hybrid position where you got a guy like Julian who can play in a lot of spots. He can play off the edge. He can play off ball. Jared Davis can do that too. And I think we all think that we want to see him lean a little bit more on the edge stuff. And I think they will. But in the pinch, is he a guy that you are at least okay with coming off the bench and filling in for an injured player? I think the answer might be yes. Like
I just don't want him dropping back into coverage. That's all.
But as a guy who, like, if your top 2 guys are injured and he's the one that has to come off and do something like that, well, you could do a lot worse. Like you're getting a guy at least with experience and all that. I don't think he's going to start. I think I have him on the inside right now. I have him on the 53 for sure. But that to me is, I mean, there's so much unknown here. Like you said, like technically the starting jobs are up for grabs, and I know Kelvin Shepard said that, and maybe he believes it. I don't think I really believe him.
Yeah, like I still expect Alex. I know as much as Lions fans don't want to see it, Alex Anzalone, I think, is going into this with a starter spot on his record right now.
Right. And I think right now the other, based on usage, and he split it with Derek Barnes, but I think Chris Board is probably the most likely the odds-on favorite to win the other starting job. But I'm not counting out Derek Barnes. I'm not counting out Malcolm Rodriguez to have some sort of defensive role. I think he's going to be on special teams right away. We've talked about Malcolm Rodriguez all offseason. The dude's super smart. He could potentially get in some defensive snaps at some point this season. I don't think he's going to start there. But then, like, there's other guys that I feel like we need to talk about too, because like Sean Dion Hamilton had a really good training camp last year, and then he got injured. Anthony Pittman. No one has played more special team snaps than that guy last year. So he's an important thing. But this kind of all goes back to this question, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Like, these special teams guys, like Anthony Pittman and like CJ Moore, who we'll get to in a bit, has this roster evolved to a point where they don't need those guys? Where they don't need guys who are really good on special teams, but you're not sure about their ability to slip into the defensive lineup? Have they gotten so talented where, like, they actually have guys who are going to be valuable out there on the defensive side of the ball, even if they're not starters? So maybe you cut a little bit from your special teams. You hedge there a little bit because you want to have so much good depth at the positions. Like, I don't know where you guys feel about that, but I feel like Anthony Pittman, CJ Moore, really talented, really important guys on special teams, but might be starting to get pushed off this roster because they're starting to get depth.
I mean, like, look at a couple of the other linebacker names that we said, though. Like, Chris Board is essentially your Jalen Reeves-Maben replacement, right, with maybe some higher upside in terms of what he can bring to you on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
Another name, though, is Jared Davis. Jared Davis will play special teams. Like, Jared Davis is a very unique...
Jared Davis wants to play everything.
He's a very unique player in the sense that what Jeremy mentioned is culturally, he's a great fit. The guy is a former first-round pick, but if his role on this team is to play special teams and be a pass rushing specialist at linebacker, he'll do it.
The guy wants to play football, and he's got no ego.
With a
no ego.
To smile on his face.
Yeah, he loves it.
Like, he's gonna do it, and that's why he's going. Like, they will prioritize him being a veteran, and it's a guy that Dan Campbell likes. A guy like that is going to win a job. I mean, it's just how it's going to be. He's going to win a job over an Anthony Pittman, or he's going to win a job over a Sean Dion Hamilton, in my opinion. Like, I don't think that they're going to prioritize youth. Like, they want to win football games, and they're going to take the best players that result in the most competitive training camp battle. And I think Davis is that guy.
It's just going to be hard, I think, for Lions fans to hear eventually that Jared Davis is going to make the roster, but James Houston will not. That's going to be a very bitter pill for Lions fans who followed this team for years now, to be like, that's going to be how it pans out after all the hype that was built up around James Houston, that Jared Davis, the recycling of Jared Davis, is going to beat him out. But I agree with it. Jared Davis wants to play like James Houston it's all about what position does James Houston want to play. He wants to play edge versus playing what they need him to play, which is off-ball linebacker. Versus Jared Davis is like, you want me to do that? Okay, cool. Awesome. I'll do that. You want me to play special teams? Sure. No problem. It's as you say, it's Jared Davis's can-do attitude. He might not be able to can-do it too well, but like,
this wouldn't have been take two for Jared Davis had the Jets not thrown the money at him they threw at him.
That's important to remember. They wanted to bring him back last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Moving to the backfield, let's talk about it's the Jeff Okudah hype, isn't it?
Hell yeah.
The pom-poms out for Jeff Okudah. Want to get the pom-pom? Like, look, we talked about it. We talked about it during the injury report. He's clear. He's clear to come through.
It's huge.
So
I mean, I know there's some skepticism, and maybe right. Like, he still might not be a full participant day one. I think this is probably a sign that he will, or it won't be long. Do you guys think he slides right into CB1?
Seeing who the other cornerbacks are, I
mean, it's going to be him and Amani in the starting lineup, right? Like,
yes,
do you both feel comfortable saying that?
If you're asking me, because when you said CB1, at first I thought, are you talking about like a battle with Warrior for like an ornamental CB1 versus CB2? But like, if you're talking Okudah versus Hughes or Parker, I love Parker, but I think Okudah is going to get the nod over him.
What do you think, Ryan?
I think it's interesting because I think it's a matter of whether or not, like, just schematically, Aaron Glenn's defense and the way that Aubrey wants to game plan it, like, are the cornerbacks going to travel? Like it,
right. And I think in the past they don't. I feel like it's usually been Jeff Okuda on the defense's left and Oruwari on the right. They might just stick with that, and so maybe labeling one CB1 and CB2 is outdated in this sense.
Sure, yeah, but I mean, I think that instantly, if the question is Jeff Okuda one of the top 2 linebackers or cornerbacks on this team? I think that Jeff Okuda is one of the top 2 cornerbacks on this team.
Yes, I agree.
The other guy, I think, really in the competition, if we're talking outside corner spot, and like, fans are not gonna like to hear this, but Will Harris looked like a pretty darn good outside corner during the offseason, and not bad during the season. Like, if you guys remember what Will Harris's journey was last year, it was first he stepped in for AJ Parker, who was injured, and then once AJ Parker came back, like, then suddenly everyone on the outside was getting hurt, and he stepped in on the outside, and so it's like, this guy has played a lot of different roles, and we know that the Lions love that, and he kind of looks at home at outside corner, and I'm just not that confident in anyone else stepping up. So maybe almost by nature, Jeff Okuda is going to be in the starting lineup because I don't really like anyone else other than Will Harris. Jerry Jacobs, as we know, now starting on the PUP list. And then you're talking about Iffy, essentially as Iffy and Bobby Price, a guy who got beat out by Jerry Jacobs in the middle of the season last year. Everyone else is either a nickel guy or probably playing safety. So I think you got your top 2 guys, and suddenly the depth doesn't look necessarily as good as you want. Although, I guess if it's Amani Oruwari, Jeff Okuda, and then your backups are Will Harris and Jerry Jacobs when he's healthy, that's okay. It's not great, but it's doable.
Mike Hughes is the question.
Right. Which, yeah, I guess what position does he play? He's got the inside-outside versatility.
This is kind of where I want to go, but not on my. I mean, I have the same question, but it's mostly on AJ Parker, because my big thing on AJ Parker is, where is he going to make it on this roster? I think they'll be flexible, but do the team look at guys? And I guess Mike Hughes falls into this camp too. Do they see these guys? Do they see Parker and Hughes more as outside corners for depth, or do they see them up for the nickel corner right now? And I think that's going to be a big question, especially because we got to throw Chase Lucas into the question if we're talking nickel as well.
I'm just not sure if it's anybody's job to lose at this point. Like, I don't know if they have like a guy where they're 100% like, this is our horse in, out of the gate when it comes to nickel cornerback. I don't think they have that guy yet.
I think you're right. And I think we saw it a little bit in spring camp where AJ and Mike Hughes were essentially splitting time at the nickel with the first team. I think that's definitely how they view AJ Parker, right? That's what he worked. Like, they started him in outside corner last year. It was kind of a disaster in training camp, and so they moved him inside, and it worked pretty well, pretty much all season. Not great, like you said. I don't think he played well enough where you're like, that's our starter. We're not there yet. The question to me is, like, is Chase Lucas really in this conversation this soon? And I know he's a 5-year guy at Arizona State, and I know he's 25, 26 years old. He's like one of the oldest corners on the team, but he's still a rookie, and he's still a 6th round. He's a 6th round pick. Like, it's not like
his spot on the roster is not guaranteed.
It's
not
6th round. I think he's safe-ish, but I'm talking like, I'm not sure he's in the conversation yet to be a starter. He's going to have to work his way on there for me.
Yeah, I think I'm most intrigued to see, like, what is going to be a Fatu Melifonu's snap breakup. Like, just because they played him a little bit at safety last year. I mean, he's primarily an outside corner. What do they think of this guy? Because it almost seems like it's the same career path as Will Harris in a way last season, where, I mean, there's just that it's where they need him. Like, where do we need Will Harris? Because that's where we're going to put him. It's almost like, where are we going to need a Fatu Melifanu? That's where we'll put him.
Right. Yeah, he's tall, he's big. Everyone kind of has subtly made references to maybe him just being a tight end matchup kind of guy. But that's a very specified role. Like, you're going to have to find more for him to do to and I'm not saying he's at risk of getting cut, but like, you're going to need someone to be more than a tight end matchup to make this 53-man roster. There's too many talented players. So I think they might play around with him still. They didn't really. I'm assuming they didn't get an answer with how little he played during spring camp at safety. So I would expect, at least early on, to kind of still see him moving around a bit.
Speaking of safeties, let's move on to that. How soon do you think Kirby Joseph's going to look the part going into? I don't know too many questions I really have about safety right now, other than Kirby. I feel like, I feel comfortable with Tracy Walker. I feel comfortable right now with Deshaun Elliott if he stays healthy.
Right.
I think that if Deshaun Elliott stays healthy this year, Kirby Joseph is going to see the field in a very limited capacity.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The whole safety, like, it seems very straightforward, right? Like, Tracy Walker, Deshaun Elliott are your starters. Kirby Joseph is a guy who they'll mix in, and a guy who might see more playing time as the season goes on.
Maybe like Brady Breeze makes the roster as like the fourth safety if they carry full safeties.
CJ Moore is the other guy, right? I just talked about him. He's very much a special teams guy. Still kind of working his way to being a good defender, but he got some playing time towards the end of last season and was okay doing it. But like those other guys that we just talked about in the corner group, you got to remember they're kind of depth at safety too. Like Ifatu might be depth at safety. If Will Harris has to come back and play safety, they'll put him back there too. So is there anyone you keep behind? Like, you could potentially only keep 3 pure safeties because you have Iffy, because you have Will Harris. Then you're suddenly kind of at 5. And so I don't know. It's an interesting situation at safety. And again, like, I don't know if there is room for special teams guys like CJ Moore. Brady Breeze, I know a lot of people are excited about Brady Breeze, and he got some, first and second playing time in spring, but I feel like that was more just they were out of bodies there. So I kind of still view him as a long shot, but I'm not going to count anybody out because of this coaching staff. They'll if anyone wins the job, they're gonna have the job.
All right. Last position here, and Jeremy can set this one out if he so wishes to do so, and me and Ryan can have a grown-up conversation about the kickers, because I feel like it's Seibert's to lose. I feel like they went with him more last year. I don't know. Ryan, I'm looking at the bubble watch spreadsheet, and I hope I'm not jumping Jeremy on anything, but like, you had both out right now. So where are you? Do you think they're gonna? Because I'm not sold on either Riley or Seibert at this point. Like, if they want to bring in someone from the outside, totally understood. It's a hard pill to swallow on where this kicking game is at right now. Where do you stand?
I just copied John Whitaker's homework from last year.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's all I did. Yeah. I have a question that is non-special teams related because I don't care about kicker battle.
You don't care at all?
I want to at least talk about it.
Whatever. Like what we all went through last year with the kickers, I kind of just see it happening again this year. Like, I don't think the Lions have a kicker that's just like, I don't know, but this is the thing. You don't really know.
Yeah.
Nobody really knows. Nobody really knows whether or not a kicker is going to have it or not have it in a year.
Right.
Because when a kicker doesn't have it, they clearly do not have it, and then they just go away. Like, the only guy who I think is kind of like, who's kind of like stuck around so long has been Mason Crosby, because Aaron Rodgers has the Packers like nuts in a vice grip. Like, I think that's the only thing that's going on.
Well, I feel like once you find a guy who actually does have it, like, be it a McManus, like, at least the guys who do have it, it'll last for a few years. And like, you can ride the hot hand. The Lions rode that hot hand for many years.
Right. And then they got rid of the reliable guy. And now this is what you get.
Right. Well, yeah, it's tough. Like, there's this dichotomy, and I think it's split between people who are at minicamp and people who weren't, because you look at the stats last year, Riley Patterson was 13 of 14. He made his first 10 NFL kicks in the league. The only one he missed was a 55-yarder. You look at Austin Seibert, he was playing pretty well too. He missed like 2, maybe the entire season, or the half season that he played before his injury. So you look at that and you're like, oh, these guys are pretty good. And then you look at what they did during minicamp, and they were just awful. Like, really, really bad, awful. And so, I mean, there's something to be said about doing it in the game versus doing it in practice. If you could do it in the game, who cares how you're doing it in practice? But kicking is also all about consistency. And if you're not doing well in practice, I don't have a lot of confidence that you're going to continue to just kill it on the field on Sunday. So I think a fair amount of skepticism is definitely warranted. I'd be very surprised if they just threw both out again and started over again.
Oh, yeah.
That would be very frustrating, because I think we all remember what what the situation was here before.
I feel like
when we were in between Jason Hansen and Matt Prater, that wasn't a fun era to be in. And so
I feel like it's like quarterback. If you have two quarterbacks, you have no quarterback. If you have two kickers, you don't have a kicker.
Yeah. I actually do have a question when it comes to kickers. Is it Cybert or Cybit?
This goes to a scrap. You are that's a violation. You're invoking a scraps episode that hasn't come out yet.
Team me up. Find me.